Hey y'all, it's Kobe R. Rice, and I'm back again with another weekly creative update. So, actually, this is going to be really short, and I actually mean it this time because, believe it or not, in about 45 minutes, I have to start getting ready for our very first rehearsal for the King Arthur production. And this is also like a production that I not only have to be present for, but I have to bring my kid in because graduate school doesn't really pay all that much. So your girl can't just be getting a babysitter for like 2 to 3 days out the week for like the next 7 weeks. That's just like not sustainable on a graduate student income. So she will be in rehearsal, and that's going to be really, really intense and really challenging. And as much as I love my daughter and as much as I am excited about this production, the combination of the two, alongside me still having to do these two TA shifts and my other graduate school classes, is causing quite a bit of nervousness and stress, which I'm actually trying to manage a little bit at a time, and just literally take the next 6 to 7 weeks, literally one day at a time, one assignment at a time, just 1 hour and one task at a time. Like, that's the only way I'm going to be able to survive this. So that's what's happening today. By the way, let me just sort of like rewind. Hi, this is Kobe R. Rice, and today is Monday, March 12th, and I don't actually know what the title of this episode is going to be. Probably, I really loved spring break and grad school destroys lives, or something like something super dramatic like that, just to kind of like get to the real meat of things. There's actually not really much to report with regard to the stuff that I did last week, because not because I didn't do anything, but because I stayed super focused last week, and I basically concentrated on writing, on building up my side business, The Bohemian Badass, and I also just focused on like relaxing, exercising, sleeping, binge watching. So I'm just gonna give you guys a quick overview as to like the sort of more minor details, the itemization of what I did last week. And I'm really happy about my progress on my projects this past week. It just goes to show, when I'm sort of in control of my own time, just how well I'm able to sort of take care of myself and manage my time and manage myself and my just everything in my life. And to be honest, I was kind of sad. I mean, I wouldn't even say kind of sad. I was really sad to have such an amazing, relaxing week where I was sort of in control of my creativity, my projects, and things like that. I was sad to leave that and to come back to graduate school. And I hate saying that because it sounds very ungrateful, and it sounds very, complainy. But that's just the fact of the case. Those are just the facts of the case. And so I'm not going to pretend that I came back to graduate school just like throwing up balloons and confetti and am just super excited. But what I did do is, on Sunday night, when I realized that my vacation was over, I really sat back and thought about my graduate school experience, and again recompartmentalized these different things that I'm learning for the rest of the semester. So, in my new play dramaturgy class, I'm gaining dramaturgical skills. I try not to think of it as like homework that I don't want to do. I try to think of it more as experiences that are helping me to develop my dramaturgical skills and are essentially helping me to develop my artistic coaching skills, because that's essentially what I'm doing in this particular playwriting play festival project, is that I'm working with 3 separate playwrights on 3 different ideas and helping them to develop their artistic work and their vision from scratch. And that's actually, if you look at a lot of, sort of online businesses nowadays, with all these life coaches and divorce coaches and health coaches, like, I'm essentially gaining skills to be an artistic coach with a specific reference and focus on playwriting and play editing. So I try to see my graduate school experiences in that light. I don't necessarily see my artistic coaching skills being something that I want to necessarily monetize as a part of my business model. I don't see that right now, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. And just in case I do want to do that, I now have quite a bit of experience already under my belt, but also forthcoming, which is really exciting. And so it's just nice to be able to see these dramaturgical experiences being parlayed into other skills that are related and translatable, basically is what I'm trying to say. So that's how I'm seeing one particular class. The King Arthur production is a class. It is a required sort of elective that we have, which is kind of an oxymoron, right? Like a required elective, but it is what it is. And as stressful as that is going to be, with having rehearsal for 4 hours every night, and then we have to meet and synthesize material, and I have to write more material, and I have to like be in the room and be present and direct and guide performance and stuff like that, and manage a 3-year-old, which is going to be crazy. I'm trying to not look at that as a class that's going to be stressful. I'm trying to look at that as directorial training, and I know this is something that will definitely translate over into my repertoire as a director, even though I want to be more, a director of film at this point. I definitely am leaving open the possibility for being a theater director as well. Why not direct for theater and for television, right? And for film, especially being that I don't think there are really many Black female theater directors, just like there really aren't as many Black female film directors. I mean, we're out there, but we're kind of like few and far between. And so I just see that part of my education once again as like creative training for the stuff that I actually want to do, and gaining skills that are actually translatable to my current career as an artist, but also my future directions for my business and for my creative endeavors. So that, along with just my other classes that are pretty much relatively academic, my architecture class and my theater, history, and culture classes, I'm still learning a lot of interesting things in those classes, even though I'm not super duper passionate about each of these classes. They're providing some interesting perspectives. So I'm just trying to, and that's kind of like enhancing and building up the scholarly aspect of my like existence as an artist and as like a person. And so all these things, as stressful as they feel right now, are just really helping me to build my repertoire. The same thing with my 2 TA-ships. I mean, I do really wish I can just focus on 1 TA-ship. That would be kind of nice. Basically, like, of the 2 years that I've been here, at the end of the semester, it would have been 2 years. Basically, an entire year of those 2 years, I've TA'd for 2 classes. And I just don't feel like it's, like, necessary for me to do all of that work at once in order to get the experience that I need to get. So it's not as, this semester teaching is not nearly as stressful as it was the first semester and like the semesters that came before, but it's just nice to be able to kind of chunk things down and focus on one thing at a time. And my TA-ship is one of those things. Although I have to say, I am learning a hell of a lot with my horror TA-ship class that I'm helping to teach and grade papers and stuff like that. This is really one of the best classes I've taken. Actually, it's like the best class that I'm in my opinion, this semester. Not because the other classes are like run poorly or anything, but because horror film is just like what I'm into. That's just like my niche, my genre. It's my shtick. It's my steez. So, clearly I'm getting my life, and it's, as I mentioned to you guys before, it's international horror. So there's just all these things that are happening that are really tiring me out, that are just kind of stressing me out hardcore. But I am trying my best to take it one day at a time, chunk things down into smaller tasks, and then try to keep the big picture and look at the big picture in terms of like what I'm getting from each part of my graduate school experience. From an even bigger picture perspective. And this is just to help remind myself of like the things that I need to be grateful for and just sit with. I get to complain about being worked from from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night, doing things that are inherently enhancing me as a person. Like, it's not the healthiest way to go about life, being pushed so hard and being so stressed out. But there are people in the world who work those hours and longer, like picking tobacco and carrying watermelon, or working hard in like fallow fields. And this is not to say that manual labor and farm labor is menial or it's lower. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there are people who would kill to be in the position to be working as, quote, hard as I'm working, but have all that hard work being going into a higher education, going into an advanced degree, going into the development of themselves as intellectuals, as artists, as people who are going to leave these kinds of programs and then go make their mark on the world and go own something instead of like being owned, and make change to the world instead of being changed and being chained by the world. So I try to keep that in mind, that I could have very easily been in that position where I'm working and breaking my back for 12 to 16 hours a day in a cornfield somewhere, as opposed to breaking my ass and being stressed out in a graduate school program, getting my third degree. So I'm trying to keep all those things in mind as I am being honest and direct and forthcoming about my feelings, about my experiences. And so this is not, again, lecturing to you guys. This is just for me to be able to look back and just think past all the hardships to what I'm going to become because of these things, and just to express a little bit more just gratitude for the experiences that I have, while I'm also critically analyzing the things that are happening in my artistic life, because being grateful doesn't mean getting stepped on and getting walked on either. So let's keep that in mind too. So those are some lessons that I've sort of picked up just today, reflecting on stuff. But I just want to get back to really quickly reviewing what I did over spring break. Wrote nearly 12,000 words, which is the most I've written since the year has started in 1 week. And I am amped. I was just loving my writing time. It was a little hard at first to get started and focus on my writing so much because I was so inherently self-critical of my, and this is something that always blocks me, because really I get the most writing done when I'm having fun and when I'm enjoying it and when I'm just into the story and I just am excited to see where the characters go, and I'm not really counting words, I'm not really counting time or minutes. That's where I really live as an artist and as a writer, and that's what I really enjoy. The same thing with world building. And this is why I enjoy world building so much, because there's no place in which an editor or an inner editor can say this is wrong, that is crap, this is, because it's just like, it's your world, you're building it. But when you're writing and there's words on the page and there are certain standards that you're holding yourself to, the editor can really wreak havoc. This week, I was able to seriously put the editor to the side by following stories and plot lines and characters that I just wanted to follow. Like, I didn't have to hit a certain word count. I didn't have to hit a particular deadline with the stories that I worked on this week. It was just me just being present with my stories and my characters. And I just had a ball. I worked on the backstory for Hollow Point, which is, again, book 3 in the books of Ezekiel, and The Haunt, which is book 4 in that same series. I'm actually writing, not because I'm trying to be overly ambitious, but because Hollow Point and The Haunt hark back to a lot of the backstory, like the prequel before all these events in this series happen. I sort of need to have like a better grasp on like the actual events of the backstory. So writing that backstory alongside writing Hollow Point and The Haunt has been really, really refreshing. I'm getting into one particular storyline and one relationship that I'm just really enjoying. And the scenes are not moving as quickly as like my editor would want them to. But my editor is locked away in a closet, basically being mad and not being able to come out to play because I, the writer, am playing right now. And it's just been great. I really enjoyed it. I also worked on the author collaboration novel that I told you guys about, 2054. Our word count is due this week, so I am in a little bit of a crunch on that. I think I'm like halfway through actually, so it's not so bad, but I need to be making progress on that every day. And that actually was like a lot harder to write because I haven't spent enough time in that world or in the world of that particular character to start really caring about them yet, or to really kind of get into the storyline. But I'm just like writing like a draft and just spitting out the shitty first draft that I need to put out there so that I'm making my deadline, and then I can just go back and then just start editing down the draft. So getting the first draft out, hiccup, is the most important thing for me at this point in time. And after literally like, it took about 6,000 words for me to really start getting into this story, which is a little unfortunate. And it sort of tells me intrinsically that the story is not quite ready in my, it's not really ready to come out of the ether yet, my internal ether. But I have to pull it out because I have to just like make a word count. And it's actually pretty good. Like, I mean, just objectively, it's a pretty good story with really great pacing and just like, like every single chapter has a cliffhanger. You know what I'm saying? I think it's good. It's just I'm not passionate about it yet. So I'm just trying to like literally get through that for this week before, I start really bringing the editor out. But I did work on that last week as well. And I sort of switched off between 2054 and the Books of Ezekiel series. And that was really great. I also did a lot of work on the Bohemian Badass, which is, again, as you guys know, the creative education and creative training arm of Rebel Ragdoll. And as I told you guys before, again, I had enrolled in basically like a monstrous mega course called Publish Your Thing, which is being sold and like managed by buyregina.com. And it's an amazing course. With every single module that I take and every lesson that I take in this course, like my knowledge is increased by 1,000%. And it's really helping me to rebuild and revamp the Bohemian Badass from the ground up. The website, even though it's completely unfinished, is looking just 10 times sexier than ever before. I'm just so glad I chose to reboot and revamp that entire brand in conjunction with this course that teaches you how to build an online infopreneur blogger brand from the bottom up. I'm just happy that I did that, because not only am I spending a lot of time in creative uni and just learning all the principles about, how to build an online business, but it's allowing me to literally build in real time my online business. And then when I'm done with the Bohemian Badass, I would love to take the knowledge that I have as an author, as an artist, as a business person, and take the knowledge that I'm learning about, through this course, and tailor it specifically towards novelists, filmmakers, and game designers who want to build their own businesses from scratch. And so and eventually I want to offer, I wouldn't say like it's going to be a clone of this class, but it will be a bottom up. Here, if you take this course, you will have a really amazing, author, novelist business at the end of it. You'll have an amazing filmmaking business at the end of it. I do want that for my readers at the Bohemian Badass and my audience there. And so I'm just learning so much from this course. I'm also learning the things that I need to take from this course and tailor specifically to what I want to do as an entrepreneur at the Bohemian Badass. And so I worked a lot on the Bohemian Badass over the week, and I will continue to do so in sort of fits and spurts. Honestly, over the next 6 weeks, I will probably literally just be focusing on surviving graduate school, because it's really just getting that intense, especially when it comes to grading and all that stuff for my TA-ships. But after that is over, I will at least be able to pick up where I left off with the Bohemian Badass. So I'm super excited about all of that. And let's see, I just rested, I relaxed, I just kind of like got myself together, got my entire life. But the biggest thing that I did, I just want to sort of like look here, aside from like, again, taking care of myself with exercise and sleep and stuff like that. 2 things that I wanted to mention. One, I am currently enrolled in InstaFreebie's crowdfunding course that teaches authors how to crowdfund their next book. I was present and been like available for the first whole week of that. I might have to do some catch up for the next few weeks of that course because, as you guys know, as I said, graduate school is getting kind of cray cray. But I'm not sure if I will even start a Kickstarter campaign, to be really honest with you, because it's just not something that's really a part of my business model right now. And when I sat the first class, I realized that I don't know if I'm quite ready for this quite yet, so I'm in that class. I will let you guys know how it's going. It's actually very well organized, and they have small groups so that we can focus very tightly on each other, give each other support and feedback and stuff like that. So the way that they set it up is great. The lesson plans are great. The information is great. They start from 0 and they go to 100. So we're kind of like at 0 right now, like learning the basics of Kickstarter or whatever. And it's great. I just don't know, after taking that first class, if I have the time or the energy at this moment to put into a Kickstarter campaign. I mean, literally the earliest I'd be able to do that would probably be sometime in like July or even August, to be honest with you. My main foci right now, as you guys know, are getting this collaboration done with the other 3 authors, graduate school, and then working on steadily my own projects, and occasionally maintaining the New Adult Noir blog, which I do have to do some work on for this month. The last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, though, is that I binge watched Altered Carbon this week, and I loved it. At first, I was just like, this is kind of... There's certain parts of this that feel a little dumb to me. Like in the first couple of episodes, I was just like, okay, I'm not really sure about this and this, but I like the world. I love the story and the premise, and there's some interesting things happening here. But by by episode 3, I was like totally hooked, and I got through the first half of it over a couple of days, and then literally just like the third day, I just watched 5 or 6 straight hours all the way to the end, like literally until 12 in the morning when my eyeballs were about to fall out. But I just couldn't wait until the next day to find out what happened. And I bring up Altered Carbon because this is literally a prime example of the very things that I want to make independently as an independent filmmaker and, potential showrunner, executive producer of my own intellectual properties. And it was just very well done. On top of that, I had first heard about Altered Carbon from J.A. Huss, who you guys know I love. Just like, she's amazing. Her attitude's amazing. Her career is amazing. Her books are amazing. And just like her business acumen is amazing. But on her course, she was talking about Altered Carbon and how much of a great series it is. And she writes well and she has good taste. So I actually checked out Altered Carbon. It's a trilogy. When she first mentioned it, and I also really enjoyed the first few pages, just suck you right in. And it's crazy because it's not like the writing is like high octane action from page 1 or paragraph 1. It's just really well written, and the world building is very it's very all encompassing. You just get sucked in. You just want to you see everything, and you want to just keep looking and keep listening to the main character, Takeshi Kovacs, and just follow his world. And so I started reading it, but then I left off of it. And then I heard through the grapevine, that Altered Carbon was getting made into a Netflix series because I had seen it on the Amazon page. And I was like, this sounds and looks awesome. I don't like watching the TV series or films before I finish books. But I made an exception because this is literally up my alley. It's cyberpunk, futuristic, high-tech, low-life, noir, dark and gritty. This is my brand. This is what I do. This is what I love. This is what I love to consume. Action / detective, noir. I'm just there. I am there for it all the way. All right? And I was not disappointed. It went above and beyond my expectations. The world building was incredible. The casting was great. The character storylines and the plot lines were incredible. Of course, my favorite character was Poe, as is for everyone else who watches the series or watched the series. And the diversity factor was off the charts, and it wasn't... See, I'm not really one to even care about whether or not diversity is ham-fisted and heavy-handed. I don't care about that because I feel like I'm getting slapped with white supremacy a lot of the time. And I don't even mean it's always like deliberately oppressive, but just the fact that there are like literally no other bodies in existence except for white bodies, and most of the stuff that we watch, for me, feels very oppressive and also just feels untrue. So I feel like I get backslapped and forward slapped with that kind of trope all the time. So when somebody force feeds me diversity, I'm not complaining. Some of my counterparts don't feel that way. They feel like diversity, like, is like too PC or some bullshit. Whatever your stance on diversity is, it is very well done. It works beautifully. Okay, like, even if it didn't work beautifully, I wouldn't care. But in this case, it just worked really nicely. It's sort of post-racial a little bit, which can be problematic in a lot of ways. Absolutely. I'm not going to say that there aren't some problems with that. But Takeshi Kovacs, in his new body is a white male. So we see a lot of him. But in his old body, he is an Asian male. Okay. And technically, according to the actual original source material, which are the novels, he is part Japanese, part Slavic, which is reflected in his name, which is a really cool name, by the way. So that just in the world building of the novel itself, there's a lot of diversity built into the novel series. But the TV Netflix version of Altered Carbon took that entirely to the next level, like completely to the next level. The woman, Kel, that Takeshi is in love with is a strong, gangster, gorgeous black woman, okay, like named Kel Chris Falconer. She's a rebel. She's like the leader against like this sort of fascist government. And like she and old Takeshi, like in his other body, they had a romance, and it was a very sweet, very like sensual, it was just great. Like two strong people being like vulnerable with each other and being in love. And it's like literally like probably the third black female Asian male love pairing I've seen in like almost 20 years. The first I saw was in Romeo and Juliet. The second that I saw was in Into the Shadowlands or something like that. That was on Showtime or something like that. I believe it had William Lee in it, and it also had Ron Perlman in it. I think it's like, Into the Badlands. I think that's what it was called. And then Altered Carbon, like we see Takeshi Kovacs, who is like Japanese and, Slavic, with this black woman, and they just look so adorable and wonderful together, and like their love story is like really complicated, and she like they can't really ever be together, it's just like it's just fucked, but like that's just how it is. And it just, so that was off the chain. We also had like another gangster ass black woman who had experienced a lot of trauma at the very beginning of the series, who just, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but she had an arc. Let's put it that way. She had an arc, and it was a very interesting arc. I was getting my entire life. Like just very heavily like diverse and multicultural cast. Like we saw Arabs on the screen, we saw Asians on the screen, we saw black people and biracial and multiracial people and Hispanic people on the screen, we saw white people on the screen, we saw women, we saw men, we saw old people, young people. Like the entire premise of Altered Carbon is so incredible because it's about this sort of transient, trans body, transcorporeal sort of philosophy, like what happens when you can transfer your consciousness to any sort of body that you want, right? How does that work? Like, how does that work for people who can afford it versus those who can't? People who can afford it can essentially afford to live forever. How does that work? Like how does society look when you take, a simple premise mixed with capitalism to like its logical conclusion? Like just all these things. They also had like religion in there, like for people who believe that there's only one life that we live and then we belong to God. How do those issues play along with this sort of forced immortality that the society is living with? You know what I'm saying? It's just it was just amazing. And people are comparing it to Blade Runner and just having attitudes and say, oh, this will never be a Blade Runner or whatever. Honestly, y'all, there's no comparison between the two. And I say that as a complete compliment to Altered Carbon because I hated Blade Runner. Now, you guys might want to fight me on this. I don't care. Blade Runner The first one and the 2046 one or 2049 one, whatever it's called. I saw both, and both were just visually just delicious. Okay, it was like visually, cinematically, the cinematography, the mise en scène, the CGI were off the charts, unbeatable. Like there's just nothing you could do to outdo the cinematic just gorgeousness of both of these films. So that is what I will give them. I will also give the Blade Runner series the credit for kicking off a lot of these philosophical questions about like artificial intelligence, what's really human versus what's not. And if so, like, how do we treat these individuals? Like, it kicks off a lot of very interesting philosophy that at that time the original Blade Runner came out, people were just starting to think about because of Philip K. Dick and how he put all these sort of interesting sci-fi stories into the mix. We're looking at like the 70s and 80s where sci-fi was really starting to get, maybe even like back towards like the 60s or whatever, late 50s, where sci-fi was really starting to like gain a little bit more momentum. That's when a lot of the foundational artists and authors were able to put out these original ideas that were mind-blowing just thinking about them. But the Blade Runner series, in terms of plot, sucks. In terms of character development, sucks. I'm sorry. Like, in both of those movies, I could have as an editor, cut down those movies by about an hour, and they would have been better for it, in my personal opinion. Like, I don't need to sit in the movie theater for 3 hours pondering, this one snowflake sitting on the tip of his nose or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but like that's how it felt. The pace was just so slow, and it asked questions, but it didn't really do the greatest job of like exploring those questions as deeply as possible. But Altered Carbon does all of that and then some. And so I think Blade Runner provides a really lovely prototype and foundation, without which things like Altered Carbon would literally not exist. But that does not mean that Altered Carbon is a lesser form or a lesser piece of art because it's not the original Blade Runner. I'm sorry, but I don't think that Blade Runner, in terms of narrative power, is as powerful as Altered Carbon is. I just don't think it's as socially impactful for me personally and emotionally impactful for me personally. Altered Carbon updates a lot of those questions and actually asks completely new questions altogether, because really in Altered Carbon, we're not talking about alternative life forms like are robots actually people. We're talking about people being people and being able to translate their consciousnesses into other sleeves and bodies and stuff like that. And what does that mean for humanity? As a matter of fact, Altered Carbon is not about robots really at all. It's about human beings. And I think maybe that's why I connect with it a lot more. And it asks really interesting questions. And it doesn't just ask those questions, it explores those questions like to a logical endpoint, to their logical conclusions. I mean, and they don't always answer all of them, the way that they need to, but they still explore it deeply enough to get you thinking. How religion plays a role in this world still has my mind blown. Like, this is the kind of sci-fi that I want to make and that I want to create. And I just FYI, I'm about to sign off in just a minute, but I just want to put a PSA out there to you guys, just to go check it out. If you just like, even if you're just actually around for like the action and, the coolness of seeing these bodies on the screen, the love story, and like the world building, you will still get what you came to get if you, show up for all those things. But if you also want to care about your characters, get into their storylines, follow them through an arc, ask questions and really enjoy the process of having these questions tested out in front of you like a social experiment, this is definitely for you. And the thing is, Altered Carbon does all of these things without boring you. So you're not sitting there for a whole hour wondering what's going to happen next and why is this happening. Like, you know what I'm saying? You just get everything that you came to get. It's incredible. It's amazing. Highly recommend it. And don't compare it to Blade Runner. Don't insult it like that. Again, no insult to Blade Runner, but they really kind of those movies gave us the starter ingredients, and Altered Carbon takes those starting ingredients and makes like literally a 5-star meal out of it that you've never had before. So I will end my podcast on that. I'm gonna go get myself centered and ready to like go do this rehearsal without being crazy. And just FYI, for those of you who listen to this podcast every single week, because my final 6 weeks are gonna be super insane, it's very possible that I might only be coming to the podcast once every 2 weeks. So if you don't hear from me next week, which is March 21st, then you should definitely expect to hear from me on March 30th, which is 2 Mondays from now. Okay, so just FYI, I will try to get back here every week and record an update on the King Arthur production, especially because I have a special situation with the toddler being there. So you guys are gonna be interested in seeing how I manage my directorial skills with like my motherhood skills. I know I'm interested to see that, but you might not get that update until for a couple weeks. So just stay tuned and hang in there. But in the meantime, you guys take care of yourselves, please. Keep the hustle. Keep indie creating. Keep writing. Keep just being badass. And I will see you guys next week. All right. Bye.